Gedicht title. When we started, when we shifted into virtual life in our Jewish life here in New York City, the first thing I really thought I wanted to explore was bargaining with God, right? So I received a good luck from the rabbi that was here in the house earlier. And so I would say good luck to all of us, because this is really, it's something I grapple with and I know is a real thing that happens, because I've worked in a hospital before. I worked in the Sinai, the Mount Sinai system. And I came in straight out of rabbinical school, really with stars in my eyes and, my guitar and that sort of thing. And I landed in the hospital and I had heard at pastoral theology that God could be an absent God. There's a relational God, a transcendent God, and there is an absent God. And I met the absent God at the hospital and at hospice and at the bedside of people I was visiting afterwards, and even at the morgue. And yes, at funeral homes and all that. So I'm sharing a source sheet with you. So I think open it up. And Rabbi Abby, do we share source sheets? Do I share my screen?
Yeah, you're welcome to share your screen. You're also welcome to, have I made you co-host? No, let me make you co-host.
Mm-hmm.
Let me find you in this list. There we go. I'm going to make you a co-host so you can share, or if that makes you anxious, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I'll share it. All
right, did that work?
Okay, here we go.
Great.
Okay. All right, here we go. Barding. So let's use our chat. Okay, we'll use our chat, and I'll open it up to comments and questions, and we'll chime in.
Can you expand? Hit the green button to make the full screen so that we can see it larger. Just like make your Chrome or whatever you're in full screen.
Okay. How
all the way over on the left, there's like a red, yellow, and green little dot.
Yeah, I see the green. I have new share. No, I am share.
No. Keep going to the left. I can see your cursor. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going.
Where?
Going up. Go up. There's a red dot, a yellow dot, and a green dot, right? One of those.
Yes, got it.
Should make you full screen. And
I'm pressing.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. I don't want to.
Okay, I was pressing my. It's blinking.
It's a little small, but it's okay.
Okay, all right. Okay, good luck to us. So here we go. So bargaining with God. So straight up and wait. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asoch b'divrei Torah. Not like we haven't been engaged in Torah this whole time, but here we go. One of the first instances, in Genesis, in the book of Genesis, where there is a confrontation. I will say confrontation. I will take you through the English and the Hebrew, where with chutzpah, with a lot of chutzpah, you have an Abraham. It says here, Abraham comes forward, okay? Comes forward is the English. So the situation here is the problem at Sodom, right? Will Sodom be obliterated or not? So in verse 23, you see in English, Abraham came forward and said, will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty, right? And so here's the scenario. If this is if really it's like scene, you have an Abraham, whatever his position, you have God, whatever the position of God is, if there would be such a thing, and we have a figure of an Abraham who is said to be standing. So here in the Hebrew, it says, Odeno omed lifnei Hashem, right? Lifnei Yod He Vav He. Odenu, od is like od, the odd, with so much, with all of being, right? Not kind of sort of just being there, but just with a lot of presence. Omed lifnei Adonai. Okay. Then here it goes. Now we're looking at the stance of Abraham. Abraham, vayigash Abraham, vayomer. And the question is, ha'af tispe tzadik im rasha? Like, really? Are you going to sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? Here it's rasha is like evil, the bad guys. Are you going to sweep away those who stand for justice and along with those who are called evil? And so right here, I'm hearing ding, 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 right? Because it is not the usual language when we have God and you have, say, Moshe, a kind of meeting. There's always this language of karov, of kuf resh bet in Hebrew. This language that says, you know, I am approaching you. We are in relationship. So I am going to approach you. There is almost like a gentleness. There's established connection. Are you my relative, or I'm approaching you, and a korban is something that eventually that will be in my hands and I'm going to offer. But here, vayigash Abraham, that's like the language of meeting. Meaning, like you and I, if we are socially distanced, right? We're going to meet each other with our masks, right? We're going to meet, a meeting, leipagesh, and we don't approach each other really. We stay distant. So here we have the language, though, that yes, in English it says Abraham came forward, but it is not that, there's not that kind of sweet connection. Okay. Now let's look at the English, right? The English goes, here's like almost like, this is like a monologue, bar none, a monologue of the highest order, right? So there's Abraham standing and going, okay, the question is, will you wipe out everybody? Guilty, not guilty, innocent, not innocent, the whole kit and caboodle. And he starts on verse 24. What if, ulai, perhaps, maybe, there would be 50 innocent within the city? Okay, begins with a high number, 50 tzadikim betoch ha'ir. And he repeats, ha'af tispe, right? Are you still going to do this? Are you still going to wipe out the people? And not, it says here, not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it. Then it goes down the line. If you do such a thing to bring death upon the innocent as the guilty, well then, so that innocent and guilty fare alike, far be it from you, shall not the judge of all earth deal justly. Such language. Let's look at the Hebrew. Chas v'chalila, it says, oh my gosh, to you. Ma'aseh kedavar hazeh, this thing, it's in your hand, it's like it's in your word, lehamit tzadik, you're going to allow the death, to cause the death of the righteous with the evil ones, so that the righteous ones and the evil ones are together. So this, I'm just noticing and naming here, and I would like you to chat, to add in the chat, right? This kind of, we're seeing the language of sweeping away the innocent, but you and I, if I'm looking at this as a piece of theater, we are being swept by almost like accusation after accusation. Okay, not accusation, but fact after fact after fact. A human being appearing before God. And what I'd like to see, and I'm going to look, I'm going to keep checking the chat, are what is happening in your mind, what is happening inside you, what are you feeling inside with this scenario. And the answer of the Lord says here, Vayomer Hashem, im emtza, if I see in Sdom, Hamishim, right, 50 tzadikim bitoch ha'ir, within the city, well then, nasati lachem hamakom, lechol hamakom ba'avra. There's something about here, I don't see forgiveness, but it's something about I am putting upon this place something, some kind of something for their sake. Okay, I'm going to look for the chat so I can see what you are thinking.
Here, I can read them to you.
Oh yes, if you could.
Right
please.
now, we just Molly Ann typed in chutzpah, born of compassion. Yeah. That's the only comment so far.
Okay.
But keep my eye on it if others post.
So I'm going to sit with that. Chutzpah, born out of compassion. All the way out on the West Coast, there's a synagogue, there's a community called Ikar, and they've got this great t-shirt that says, Holy Chutzpah. So chutzpah, born of compassion. All right, so let's just look at how the Ramban, breathes a little life, okay? So this is not all that the Ramban says, but it's just one thing that struck me. And it's the phrase about within the city, right? So we have an Abraham, says here, even if they are originally from elsewhere, Abraham was hoping they were like other righteous immigrants like Lot. Okay, like sort of in our time, right? This is so timely. What is curious here is we have Abraham taking this stance before God on behalf of people that were not his people. Right? Let's just sit with that. Abraham is taking a stance on behalf of people not his people. So other places where you have God coming in with really strong language. In the book of Bamidbar, so I will strike them with pestilence and disown them. And I noticed that when I took note that once we entered social distancing, we started in the book of Leviticus, right? In the Holiness Code. Clear as day. I think our first, one of our first services where it was just the prayer leaders and a musician, and yes, we use music, and our sound, our AV person was the beginning of Leviticus. And now we are in Bamidbar, we are in the book of Numbers, and here we see, I will strike them with pestilence and disown them. And another expression that of God showing anger, like expressing the anger, and again, the language of destruction. So the question here is, when the explicit will of God is known, is it not impudent and somehow absurd for us to negotiate it away? Okay. I ask you that question again. When the explicit will of God is known, whether we understand it or not, right? Pandemic, there it is. Why, how, why us, why them, why this long? Not that, but just it is there. Is it not impudent to somehow try to negotiate it? Now, who's negotiating, right? Have you ever been in a place where you thought that you were negotiating? If I do this, could you just please? I will do this so that I may raise the soul of my people, of my person, my beloved. So just ponder that when you have, don't think Jewish, just think you. And I'm saying this because this is what I saw in the hospitals. This is what I saw when I was in hospice homes. This was what I saw at the bedside of someone who was ailing in their home. And this is what I saw at the morgue. If you could just do this, then I will. So what I'm going, no answers, right? No answers, just sit with that. Because this dilemma is a human dilemma. It knows no bounds, no religion, no creed, no color, no sex, and no socioeconomic advantage. It is equal opportunity employer. But what I've noticed, and what other rabbis have noticed, a lot of students have noticed, that in this language where God is saying, "V'hashmid, I am going to wipe you all out," and Moses or Abraham goes, "Wait, stop, don't do that." Somehow there is a kind of a retractive language that comes up, and it's the language of "I will go down." So for example, eradana, even the language of please, right? Ve'er'e, and I will see, to see. And it says here, haket sa'akata, that whether that which is my tza'ak, that which is like coming from the bottom of my garon, my throat, my my angst. If all that, the way I have acted, meaning this they're calling the outcry, has reached me, the divine me. And it says, Ve'im lo ed'a. Let me take note. So that's one language that says, oh wait, I'm going to do that. I've given you this salvo, and then you raised your voice, or you will raise your voice. Wait, my husband is saying something. People have chatted. Maybe Abby can read. Okay. Jerry said, some people have chatted. He said maybe Abby can read.
Good, thank you. And I'm going to go back and let's see where I'm going to pick some of these off. So Jeff Siegel wrote, in V'ahavta, God says, if you do A, then I will do B. God bargains with us. So then we take from that we can bargain with Hashem.
Yes. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Right? Those blessings in the morning of Kriyat Shema. Right? I don't want to say tit for tat. Not a good thing to say about the verses of Kriyat Shema. Right? I will bring you crops. Okay, let me see. I will bring you and anything else?
Yeah. Um, some great stuff here. So I'm kind of bouncing through to find. So Bridget wrote, I don't think it is absurd to negotiate with God. Prayer can be a form or a negotiation. As Jews, we are taught to question, and as Israel, it is inherent that we wrestle with negotiate God. And then Susan responded, I don't know if it's to Bridget or to this whole conversation, this teaching. While this feels so compassionate and we champion it, I find it really difficult in a way. If I think about the conflict here and abroad with people on the other side of the spectrum, politically, ethically, would I be able to bargain on their behalf? It feels easy when I see what I think is injustice, but not easy at all when it comes to people who seem uncaring, selfish, no thought for the other, the immigrant, the person of color, etc. I'll pause there.
Thank you, my ally and friend.
Uh-huh.
Um, and let's remember, right, that Abraham in that section of Genesis was advocating for people that were not, there were other people, Opie, other folks, right? And but there was this language too. Let me see if I can see it. I don't want to get you dizzy.
Mira, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're doing great.
Yeah. Somewhere. There's a language somewhere, right? There's language somewhere. If you find it, you tell me that all of this was happening, but that God knew, like God knew Abraham. There was a language of Yadati, right? I don't know where it is now, but maybe I didn't put it back, maybe I took it out. But there was a language of, I know you, Abraham, right? So I know you, and there was this moment of separation first, right? Now you are God, and I have a case that I'm going to bring in front of you. I'm not approaching you. I am going to meet you like two people, almost like in an equal position of some kind of power. One, the power to give, like potech dadecha, the big hand that is capable of giving, but the other one has the power of the voice, right? The power of the cause of the other. So like I said, there was a language of, but I know you. And now here we're going to start looking at this language of God is going down to you, right? We always say, go down, Moses, way up to Egypt land. It's like, God is coming down to you. And here it says, I will go down to see whether I've acted altogether. Okay, let's keep going. All right. And I just wanted to add this, for Rabbeinu Bachya, some kabbalistic thought also that in the language pertaining to this tza'ak, this kind of like from your throat, from your gut kind of outcry, that it is a reference to a mystical dimension of the Jewish people, right? And that it is, here, it's not in the order of the way we usually study text, because usually we go biblical verse, then we do rabbinic literature, and then we go in, or Mishnah, Gemara, and then we go, other commentators, and then maybe much later we do some kabbalistic looking in. But my Romemu community seeks this pretty early on in study. And so it is said that it is this that has added its outcry in front of God and pleading on behalf of its counterparts, right? In the terrestrial world. So in the book of Exodus, again, we see this language of, I am coming down to you. Va'ered lehatzilo, I am coming down to rescue them from the Egyptians. So all I'm looking here is, I'm looking at the verbs, I'm looking at the very, very simple, what I see as if it was theater, as if it was happening in front of me. because somehow in the simplicity of that, I start to understand power dynamic. So you heard Rabbi Abby True say that with Dr. Renee Hill, I co-founded a study group called Harlem Chavruta. And part of Harlem Chavruta methodology of looking at Torah, of looking at our study, is we look at power dynamics, right? We look at power dynamics and how almost like this biblical and this mystical scene or this theological truth is manifest, and how it affects us when people like us who are always in negotiation, in bargaining for a place to be heard, a place to study, a place to be recognized, or a place even to enter and sit at the table. So positions, how people approach each other, who is higher, who's lower, who is holding the power, and who has the bargaining chip, so to speak. These are things that matter a lot to us, right? All right, so we are following this action of coming down, right? Right now we have God coming down in a cloud, right? And this is part of our whole all of our revelation image. So I'm going to stop here for a moment and ask Rabbi Abby if there are any other.
So Sammy Cantor, hello Sammy Cantor, so glad to have you back. Sammy was part of our staff at the JCC running the 20s and 30s program for many years, so it's great to see you here. And he put in the chat that something challenging for him is about bargaining with God, is that, I'll say it in his voice, is that my instinct is to ask God for things that science or reality tells us God might not be able to provide. Mm-hmm. Heal someone sick, get the dream job you want, stop some bad thing from happening. Mm-hmm. What happens when we bargain with God for something and it doesn't or can't happen? Mira, you're also welcome if you want to stop sharing your screen temporarily so we can see you and each other, and then you can share it again when we're done with the Q&A. That could also work.
I get to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sure. So that's Sammy, right? What happens when we bargain with God for something and it doesn't or can't happen? So this is part of what happens, right? That we don't come to any, that we don't experience that. But here we are in COVID-19 times, and we are 100,000 in this country. No one is not touched, right? In Israel, something happens, everybody knows, everybody's touched. But 100,000 in this country, we are now all touched. And we are going to bargain, we are going to plead, we are going to ask, we are going to say, if this happens, I will become kosher. If this happens, I will, I'll put on tefillin. If this happens, I will, do study. I will do morning minyan. I mean, this is just human nature, right? And the language also of faith, the language of supplication. This is just basic negotiation between you and me and human beings. It's like, even in a job, our jobs are getting cut down. They are being restructured, reformed, and we say, hey, look, maybe we can, I'll work less hours. I will do this, but how about I keep my my medical, right? Let me keep my medical and let me keep my child on my medical. I'll take a cut in pay. So when I was looking at bargaining with God, like all over some of the other faith forums, it always was the language is, no, you don't negotiate with God. ever, you don't bargain. You only pray to praise, right? And I'm seeing now that praying to praise, when we say Yishtabach or when we say Ashrei, it is not so much to just say praise and praise. It is actually to lift you up and to lift up the other people also who are beside us as we are praying. It is to that we can be positive and that we can say yes, rather than let me sink into my hole, zokefet kefufim, double down, that it's like upon us, Aleinu, it's upon us to just keep lifting. I will be quiet now.
There were some great follow-up questions that Sammy's raised up in people.
Yeah.
So Aviva and Miriam kind of both asked a version of, like, how do we know what things God can do and what can't? Or Miriam's version of that was like, we're actually told not to ask Hashem for things that have already been predetermined. Like, don't pray for the sex of the baby, right? So how do we know what's already predetermined? How do we know what we can and cannot bargain for?
May I share something? May I share I guess a kavanah that I used to do, like when I was in the hospital, right? Because you can just imagine, you walk in, the smell is there, right? The smell of antiseptic the whole time. Or if you're working think of all the essential workers and the healthcare workers working where they are now, right? So especially when I'm asking somebody for something, okay, I'm going to ask, a hard ask. So, okay, here's a common situation. A Jewish family this was pre-COVID, when we could visit our loved ones in intensive care, right? So in the intensive care units, it's like one big room separated by curtains, right? And food, to bring food in from the outside is not acceptable, right? The only food that goes in there is the food for the patient. So our loss of kashrut, what happens, right? Our food, we cannot leave in the day room, right? Where people can hang out and eat and wait. We have to keep it separate from non-kosher food, right? So now a Jewish family brings their food inside that little cubicle where their loved one is, and I have to advocate for this family, right? To do the right thing both ways. So I look at the business manager, the nurse, and all the people around the patient, and I check in with them, how they're doing. If it's possible, I do a prayer with them. I'm looking at them like, this is my God. This is my divine. Yes, we are going kabbalistic here right now, right? That there's Hayot Habore Yitbarach. There is divine energy and God energy in this person, in this constriction, in this tzimtzum of divine energy. And this person in front of me is a manifestation of God. I'm going to ask them for what I need, right? And I would just do that, the same as the person I'm serving, so that it becomes, yes, the multiplicities become one. Is it a game? You tell me. No answers. That's one way of managing. Carney Mim says, Kubler-Ross identifies bargaining as the third of the 5 stages of grief. Right? Don't we often bargain with God when we are grief-stricken? Ira Wolfman, I think I know you. How many Ira Wolfmans on the Upper West Side? Moshe and Abraham are negotiating, but in neither case is it for themselves. Yes, that's the key, right? they were negotiating not for themselves. It seems to me that they're acting with chutzpah, yes, as consultants, advisors to God. If you do this, this will happen. Do we really want to do this? Are Jews chutzpahdik? Is the question. And this one from Jeff Siegel. So we don't unmute here ever, right? Okay.
You're welcome to unmute. Absolutely. It's your section, Mira. And so
Jeff
however
Siegel,
you want to.
may I call Jeff Siegel to read this?
Okay.
Please. It's too much. It's too beautiful. Please.
We also pray to cause something positive to happen.
Yes.
People of so many faiths express these hopes almost reflexively. Jews say, Im tirtzu Hashem. We say, God willing. In Spanish, they've borrowed from Arabic the word which is now Spanish, ojalá, which means, oh, if Allah permits. We say, I hope to God that such and such happens. But the bargaining only happens in moments of extreme pain or torment. If you save my child, I'll pray to you every day. And in fact, I knew a Mexican woman who did not have children. And she said, God, if you give me a child, I will convert to Judaism and I will bring this child up as a Jew. And she had 2 boys and she's bringing them up as Jews and she's completed her conversion and the boys completed the conversion and I was there with her and I taught her a little bit of basic Judaism too, along with everything else. So I have seen this bargaining with God and the real, but it wasn't just a desperation word. If you do this and then the thing happens and says, oh, well, okay, forget about it. No. This woman was really serious. She went whole. She went completely hook, line, and sinker, the whole thing. And she's bringing up 2 children. They are now they have converted from Catholicism to Judaism. The kids are in Hebrew school now, doing very well. And I've seen how sincere this is, this bargaining with God. She kept her part of the bargain. God gave her the children, and she kept her part of the bargain.
You know, Jeff, and Rabbi Abby knows this. I made some kind of bargain like that too, and I didn't say, and I was trying to get pregnant, and this was way back, and at that time I was dancing. I was a dancer, and I was like this, and I didn't know, I didn't know that if you were like this, if you were so underweight, you couldn't get pregnant. Wow. I knew of dancers who were like, doing nutcracker to, 5th month pregnant, crazy things like that. And so, we tried. And so one day I read this article on, what was it first? It was the Post. Yes, the New York Post. Yes, I admit, I read the New York Post. Because I was a Knicks fan. I loved the Knicks. This was in the 1990s when there was hope. Hope springs eternal. We had John Starks and we had, Patrick Ewing and, we had the Enforcers. We had a great team. And so I bought it. I bought the Post for the sports news, and voila, lo and behold, there was an article. It said that women were getting pregnant by sitting in a chair, right, in Ashdod, in the town of Ashdod in Israel, right? So apparently a supermarket had just opened, and to make the blessing for the supermarket, the family invited a Rebbe from Morocco, right? And there was this chair where eventually that chair became the cashier's chair. And then lo and behold, every cashier that sat on that chair became pregnant. So what happens? The news spreads, right? So pretty soon people were driving to this supermarket by the beach in Ashdod, and women were sitting on the chair. And eventually people would sit on the chair, even men would sit on the chair praying for their daughters to find spouses, and for children, for all those things. So here I was in New York City. I read this, so I told my husband, Jerry, we can go and I can pray and sit. And by that time, after so many after almost 2 years of trying, we were desperate. We were really desperate. So we looked it up, and then and we said, our cousins in Israel said, we don't really buy this, but hey, if it brings you to Israel, well, then again, so come. So, but just before that, I read about Taharat HaMishpacha. So Taharat HaMishpacha is this practice of keeping sexual relations only limited to the time when a woman is fertile, right? So I told my husband, Taharat HaMishpacha, there was this magic green book in Spanish that I found, El Matrimonio, to follow this. I said, we're following it. So then he said, by that time we were like, yes, whatever it is, yes. So we planned to go. We started following Taharat HaMishpacha. We got to Israel, and I didn't speak English and Hebrew, and we called this place. It turned out to be a supermarket, really like a supermarket, right? And we spoke to the Rebbitzin, and the Rebbitzin actually spoke to our cousin and said, the first question was, are they following Taharat HaMishpacha? Yes. Are they following the rules of family purity? And we were like, yes, we were. Right? So she said, good. Then, come around the time of fertility, go to the mikvah and then come, right? So we went, we drove to the beach and found a supermarket, this gray old cavernous place. And I was sure they were going to ask me for $500, just, for the pushka, I was sure, because I live in New York. Everything costs a lot. So we got there, and they said, oh no, the chair is all the way in the back. It was in the bomb shelter. So we went to the bomb shelter, and there was this little box, like little tzedakah box. And you could see in the little tzedakah box were 20 shekels, like this. And I thought, oh my gosh, it is that kind. I can give what I can give. I don't need to, shell out thousands of dollars. And we got to this room, just gray. And we sat in a circle, and we were told, just keep doing tehillim, keep doing prayers, psalms, right? So our cousin was with us, Arona, to translate for us. And I could not read a lick of Hebrew, right? I knew my liturgy, my Shabbat liturgy, and I knew weekday liturgy. I did not know Psalms at all, right? I didn't know Tehillim. I didn't have the practice. So my husband also was with me. He's the kind of person, like he will do service in shul, like as a musician, he will do everything, but prayer is not his thing, he will say, right? It is not his thing. So there we were like the blind being led by the blind, and our cousin doing the Tehillim. In comes the Rebbitzin. Rebbitzin walks in, and lo and behold, it's like the skies opened. She spoke Spanish. She was Moroccan, and she spoke Spanish. It was like the heavens opened up for me. I could speak with her.
¿Estás segura que no era ladino? ¿Eso fue puro español? It was pure
Así,
Spanish?
no? It una mezcla, no? Like a
A
combination,
mix.
right? And so, but what happened to me, it was like I felt like the sky, like I felt like really long, my chest opened,
Right.
and when I sat in the chair, and I did, my cousin was doing the prayers in Hebrew, and I was praying with my heart. But like my heart was about to burst, but my heart had already burst. I was understood, right? It
Right.
was like God could hear my prayers because this Rebbitzin spoke Spanish. So after that,
So
we
you
were
were
done.
operating, but you were operating under under the old Christian assumption, I think, that the priest actually is the conduit to God. So you made her that.
No, she was a woman. She was a mom. She was
I
a
got it.
woman. I could sense that she was a woman, and she spoke Spanish. For me,
Okay.
that was it. She spoke Spanish. She could she could somehow understand the plea in my heart,
Right.
right?
Were you bargaining with God? Was there a bargain in
Oh
here?
yes, absolutely,
What
right?
was it?
The bargain was anything I need to do to be pregnant, to have a child, I will do, right? Just anything and everything, whatever it is, right? I will live as, I will live and give my life. That was the bargain. And but just to make sure, we went to the hotel also. We did all of that. Long story short, I got pregnant, right? Well, actually, that's not true. We weren't so sure also, right? So we were also going to see a friend of mine who was a healer. And when this healer saw me, he said, but of course you're pregnant. And he said, he's looking at me, he said, you're pregnant. So it was like 2 weeks. And he said, don't believe me, go to the big island, because this was another island, and get checked. And sure enough, I was. So all I can say here is like, that's the story. So that person is the child that became the student of Rabbi Abby.
I'm just jumping in to say 5 more minutes.
Yeah, I know,
That's
5 minutes.
part of
We're
my
gonna
job.
finish up. Yeah. So
Wow.
I bargained. I just said, yes, whatever you need, whatever is needed to serve, I will do that just to have a child. And this was the good story. But I want to also lift up the ones that fall in the cracks, right? So Chris Williams is saying, I'm wondering about the relationship between bargaining and ego, including if praising God in moments of bargaining is about God's ego, right? And Aviva says, I agree, the real bargaining occurs in the heat of the moment. I had an experience like this as well as a patient in an ER. We speak to God or cry out. And Hannah bargained with God and Gideon bargained with God. And my friends, it is not pretty. Whatever this is, this kind of pleading before God is not pretty. It is, I say the word pleading, and I remember something just like, you know how wolves, they say that the dominant wolf after, there's a tussle, the dominant, the wolf that is not the dominant wolf will offer his or her neck like this, right? And that is in many ways, it's not pretty when we are in this position. But whatever it is, it is. And we have 3 minutes to go. And the one last question is from Malian Blumenthal. And she says, didn't Moses, when God had had enough, and Moses urged him not to give up on God's people? So that's the one, right? Also, even after the sin of making, fashioning this golden calf, still, right? That we have the chutzpah to get up there and say, wait a minute. So in closing, if anyone would like to throw in the chat a kavanah, also a cry up to the heavens like this, like Tevya going, what? What? Throw it in the chat. So in closing, I'm going to read to you something that happened. It's a situation that's replete with so many things, right? It's a prayer. It's a cry out. So it goes like this. So I'm watching CL. It's the initials, right? This is a report for a visit to somebody at a hospice home. I'm watching CL asleep as his wife by his bedside tried to find meaning with this terminal diagnosis. The stories about them in their shul in Atlanta, seemed so distant. It was a Friday morning, and as a visiting chaplain just before Shabbat, I had no answers for them. Only thing I had was my presence, and and my ear. That's all I had. So who was CL and who was his wife? Well, they're from Atlanta. They had come to a conference, a Jewish conference. But he felt ill. He felt very ill before the week was over, and soon he was in hospice. He fell ill. He went to the hospital. They put him directly to hospice. So we had that meeting in the morning. Before I went home, because it was still not Shabbat, I picked up an electric set of candles, right? Those clicky things. And I thought I would go, I would pass by again on Monday to leave it for them. But when I got back to the facility, the bed was empty. And when it's empty, it means he died. He was just there. He died. And so I got so busy and I forgot to follow up. And I just said, is it too late to make a bereavement call? And I just said, really, God? Really? So Aviva's prayer is that we have the courage to bargain with God on an ongoing basis. Yes, to be our best selves.